Hi, it's Teresa from Dodge Nature Center, and time for another Nature to Go. Do you hear that? Yep, that's a sound of spring. And at the Nature Center, it means we're out tapping trees collecting maple sap to make maple syrup. But did you know that traditionally, that's not what they were making from the maple sap? If we go back and look historically at what the sap was being used for, it was being used to make maple sugar. And why was that? Humans love sweet things. Go to the grocery store nowadays, and there's complete aisles of cookies and candies. And then you can go into the baking aisle where there's all different kinds of sweeteners that you can use in your own baking and cooking. But if we go into the past, here in North America especially, there weren't a lot of sources of sweeteners. You might think, well, there must have been honey. But honeybees aren't native to North and South America. They were actually brought here, and so there was no honey from the honeybees. So what the native peoples were able to use were wild fruits, like wild raspberries, or huckleberries, which are kind of like blueberries, or choke cherries. And then there was maple sugar. Maple sugar was much more convenient for the indigenous peoples to have because they didn't have to worry about a liquid. What would they keep it in that it wouldn't be sloshing around all over the place? It was much lighter weight to carry with having all of that water removed and just the sugar left behind. And it also gave it a much longer shelf life, that this would last all through the rest of the year until the next maple syruping season. The maple sugar was a valuable product for the Native Americans for several things. It was important in terms of feasts and ceremonies. It was used as a main seasoning with a lot of the different foods, being mixed with fruits and vegetables, with any of the different kinds of meats they had. They would make pemmican with it, or in this area it was called washna. And so it was mixed with berries and an animal's meat and its fat. And that was like an energy bar almost for them. That was a long-lasting product, and it was very stable. It didn't go bad on them. In the summertime, they would mix the maple sugar with water and make a refreshing drink from it. Now, besides being valuable as a food source, maple sugar also became important because it was used for trading. When the Europeans arrived, they realized they wanted sugar. And they didn't find sugar sources here that they expected. So like we said, there was no honey. Cane sugar was pretty common in Europe by then. It was still expensive, but it wasn't anything that was really in North America very commonly because it was very expensive to ship. And so having maple sugar that they could make themselves was something that the Europeans started learning how to do. But if they didn't have the time or the equipment, then they would trade with the native people's maple sugar for products like kettles, metal spiles, different kinds of metal products that they could use not just for maple syruping, but in other parts of their lives. Even into the 17 and 1800s, maple sugar was still the predominant sweetener here in North America. And that was partially because cane sugar was very expensive, but there was a movement to boycott that white sugar. And this came about because what was needed was slave labor to be able to process the cane sugar. The East India Company estimated that it cost one slave's life for every 450 pounds of sugar that was produced. And so abolitionists, both in Britain and in America, said, we need to stop buying this sugar. And so maple sugar became what people would use. And it also became then a cash crop for people here in North America, that farmers would make their own and they would sell extra. By the time of just after the Civil War, attitudes had changed, laws had changed, and so maple sugar was no longer the prized commodity that it had once been. But Maple syrup became what people wanted. And that's what we think of today when we get to March and springtime, is that we're collecting the sap to make maple syrup. So enjoy some maple syrup or some maple sugar this spring. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you again next time.